Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And today we are recapping the Quad Season 1, Episode 5. So, one thing before we get started is some of you have commented on the fact that my episode count is off. And actually, what it is a difference between how I'm looking at the episodes and how BET is looking at the episodes. So, BET did not count the season premiere as an episode. They started counting their episodes with the second show. So I just considered it as their series premiere, whereas they looked at it as a movie. So that's the difference. Whereas I'm showing this as episode 5, but BET on their website has it as episode 4. So this episode is entitled Quicksand, and it's the aftermath of the video that was released on the show. And one more thing I want to point out, that even though I'm loving the show, it was another great episode, I think we're starting to see some of the flaws in the writing and the character development, and I'll actually point out a couple of things in this recap that I picked up on. So let's get started. The show opens with a makeshift beauty salon and barbershop in 2 of the dorm rooms. And I guess this is like really popular on campuses where, the girls, to earn extra money and to get the hookup, they'll do each other's hair, and the guys will, cut each other's hair. And so that's what we have going on. And so the scene goes back and forth between the females and the males, and they're, getting their hair done and doing all this, makeup and eyelashes and all this stuff. And so they're giving their different perspectives on the video that was revealed, and at the president's party. And they started out talking about Cedric dropping the mic, when he told everybody off, and then it moves over, to the video of the rape scene. And so some of them are saying that it wasn't rape, and some are saying that it was rape, and it's a mixture, with the boys and the girls, and they're both sharing some of the same perspectives. So there's a lot of organizing going on campus to address what happened. And we move over to Sydney, and she's in a math class, and she's like having flashbacks of what happened the night that the assault actually took place. And so we have the professor, and he's talking and giving formulas, and Sydney is kind of like freaking out, trying to keep her composure as she's thinking about, what happened, and it's replaying in her mind. And so then all of a sudden we have the professor, and he's calling her name, and then she comes to, and we realize that the class has ended and everybody in the class has left, and Sydney is like still sitting there, daydreaming or focused on what happened to her. Then we move over to Eva's office, and she's having a meeting with the campus police chief, and a student comes in who actually had access to the surveillance footage. And so as they're talking, the boy, Eva could tell that he's hiding something, so she kind of presses him, and he admits that he was the one that created the video and sent it out over the campus alert system. So we learn that the student's name is AJ, and he tells Eva that the reason he did it was because he has a cousin who's in college, and she was raped and nothing was done about it, and that this type of thing is happening on college campuses across the country, and nobody wants to address it. And so he felt that this was the only thing that he could do to bring attention to what's going on. But he said the moment he pressed the send button, he regretted doing it, and he apologized for any harm that he's caused. So after AJ leaves, Eva and the police chief, they have a discussion, and he's pretty much downplaying the whole incident and saying that it could very well have been 2 students hooking up on campus who didn't realize that they have all these surveillance cameras all around. And so, Eva was very unhappy with his lackadaisical attitude and the fact that, he wasn't taking the matter seriously. And so she demands his resignation. And so, of course, he's shocked, like, what do you mean you're firing me? And I think they said that he had been the police chief for 9 years. But Eva said she wasn't having it, she wasn't putting up with it, and that they were going to be taking these kind of things seriously, and that he had to go. We move over to the band director Diamond, and he calls a meeting of all the leaders in the band, and he's talking to them and asking them, do they have any knowledge of the video, who was in the video, anything that they know. And then Danny said that he didn't know anything, and that he had talked to some of the band members, and none of them knew who was in the video. And then he actually went on to say that just because the video had that little hashtag about, is this rape or rough sex or something like that, doesn't mean that it was actually rape, and that it could have, just been two people hooking up in the bushes, sort of like what the police chief said. And so, Diamond wasn't happy with that response. And he lets them know that, he takes it seriously. And if he finds out that any of the band members are involved, they'll be dismissed immediately, because he's not going to tolerate, members of his band assaulting other students. And so as the students are preparing to leave, Diamond has another one of those like bouts with pain. And once again, nobody says anything to him like, are you okay, Mr. Diamond? Is there anything we can do to help? But we did see Danny kind of like staring at him or giving him like a prolonged look where, you could tell that he's noticing what's going on and he's concerned about it. So as Danny is leaving, a female student comes up to him and lets him know that her boyfriend overheard Noni, orchestrating the whole thing between Danny and Terrance. Remember they got into the fight at the president's party. And so, she just spilled the tea on Noni and put her on blast and let, Danny know that she couldn't be trusted, and that she was going back and forth sharing stories between Danny, telling Danny that Terrance was talking about him, and telling Terrance that Danny was putting him down and insinuating that he was gay. We move over to Cedric, and he decides to give Ebony a call and see how she's doing. And Ebony lets him know that she's doing much better, and that she's had, several tests, and they came back, that she's okay. And it's been a while since she's experienced any really bad headaches. And so Cedric suggests that they go out, and Ebony says that now is not a good time, and that she's really not ready, to be out hanging out again. And then she comes up with a reason to get off the phone. So we move over to the football team, and it's the end of a game, and they're being interviewed because they won again. And so during the interview, the reporter asked Terrance, how does he feel about Bojan scoring 2 touchdowns when he was put into the game? And so Terrance kind of brushes it off and he walks off. And then Bojan comes up, and then, the reporter is asking him, and he says, it was a great feeling, and it's all about teamwork and all that good stuff. So then when the coach comes up, the coach lets the reporter know that, he likes how everything is going, and that Terrance is his starting quarterback, and he's also impressed with Bojan and what he's doing on the field when he gets his playing time in. So later, Bojan goes in to meet with the coach about his playing time, and so the coach lets him know that he can increase his playing time, but as long as they are winning, Terrance is the star quarterback and he'll be the starter, but he reminds Bojan that, so Bojan is a freshman. He sat out 2 years because nobody would touch him for whatever he did. And I guess in his high school year, or I don't know what I can't remember what his issue is. So anyway, he reminds him that Terrance is graduating the following year, and that if he keeps playing the way he's playing, that he will move into that starting role. So just to be patient. So Sydney returns to her dorm room after a shopping trip, and Madison expresses, her concern that Sydney isn't addressing the rape, since she says that she was the one in the video and that she was being raped, that she isn't dealing with it really well. But Sydney is actually dealing with it because she's spending her mother's money and going out shopping and drowning her sorrows in spending money, which is therapy for a lot of people that are trying to ignore things that they're going through. So Madison wants Sydney to go and tell Eva, what's going on, but Sydney says she's not going to do it. And so Madison, she's pretty upset with Sydney because, she wants to tell everybody else how to deal with their issues, but then she's not dealing with her own issues. So after Madison leaves the room, Sydney has a breakdown where she's screaming and crying, and she snatches all the clothes out of the closet, and throws them all over the room. So something's going to have to give sooner or later with Sydney. So the board calls a meeting with Eva, to discuss her firing of the police chief without consulting with them, or, during due calls, or like an internal hearing, where he had an opportunity to give his side of what was going on. And so Jasmine Guy's character, Ella Grace, I think her name is Ella Grace. So, she says that she talked to the police chief and that he's very remorseful, and that, he understands that he may have spoken out of turn, with how he was expressing himself. And then Pettigrew, he's basically downplaying the incident and suggesting that the girl, in the video may have just like rough sex, and that Eva is reading more into it than she should be. We move over to Cedric, and he shows up at Ebony's house, to force her to go out and get some fresh air. And so when he comes into the room, he's like, oh my God, like Ebony has literally been locked in this room since she left the school, and it isn't smelling too fresh. So Ebony, she expresses her frustration of having dreamed of being in Diamond's band, and when she finally made it, this happened and she had to leave. And so the conversation turns to Chantel, and Cedric lets her know that it helps to be able to get out the house, and not just sit in your room and dwell on what's going on because you have no power to change it. And so Ebony, she agrees to hang out with him. And so I like their little chemistry, and maybe he could talk Ebony into coming back to school, but I do like the two of them together. So Ebony and Cedric, they go to this club where they have like an open mic night thing going on. So he tries to convince her to come back, but Ebony says that it's too painful. So she mentions that her dad did want her to go back to GAMU and get her saxophone. I guess she left it when she was leaving. So the two of them talk about, politics, and agree, to keep up with each other and keep each other uplifted in spirit, so they can move forward in their lives after these two tragic incidents have happened. And so at the same time, the MC comes up on the stage and announces that open mic is about to begin. And so Cedric offers up Ebony, tell the lady that Ebony, can rap, and to call her up there. So when Ebony gets up to the stage, she says that she doesn't want to just rap, she wants to have a battle. And so the lady is like, okay, well, who are you going to have a battle with? And so of course she points out Cedric. So the two of them get on stage, and it wasn't really a battle as far as, you remember when BT used to do the little battles on the show with Free and AJ? What was the name of that show? We used to come on at like 5 o'clock, where they would have the stars. Anyway, I can't remember. But it wasn't a battle like that where you have two rappers and they're going at each other back and forth, insulting and throwing shade. They basically were doing like a rap collaboration, and it sounded pretty darn good. So they tore the stage up. Everybody seemed to like it. And even though I didn't like the music that was playing in the background, I thought that both of them have some skills, and whoever wrote those lyrics did a really good job. So we go back to GAMU, and Eva and Ella meet at her house, and they are getting tipsy over some white wine and fruit. And so Ella Grace, she tries to impart some knowledge on Eva and let Eva know that she really needs to slow her roll and stop making people feel inferior, that she's trying too hard to, to seem like she's more than what she is, and that she's gotten control and she's going to take control of the college and turn it around, and that her actions are kind of like making them feel like Eva thinks they're country bumpkins and don't know any better, and that she's their Lord and Savior. And so, she tells Eva to stop, trying to prove that she's the woman for the job and actually start acting like she is. So Eva apologizes and lets her know that, she appreciates her and that she didn't mean to be offensive, and that, she really needs Ella Grace in her corner. So the following day, Sydney returns to her dorm, and Madison has staged somewhat of an intervention, as she has these two girls in the room that belong to a group called IDC, which stands for I Didn't Consent. So it So Sydney immediately is offended and upset that Matheson would do this, and she kicks the girls out and was very rude about doing it, even though they hadn't done anything to her. So after the girls leave, she then tries to get Madison to leave the room, saying that she needs some time to herself. Madison replies, "Good thing there's two beds in this room because I'm not going anywhere." And then she plops out on her bed and puts her headphones on. So Sydney, I think the only person you control is your mama. She's the only one that pays attention to your temper tantrums. So then we go to Bojan's room and he gets a call from his dad. And so his dad wanted to let him know that, he's been putting some fillers out there and spreading his video around, and that two colleges have shown interest in him. And so I think Bojan learned from the first game, when his dad kind of like slammed him up against the wall for saying that he really liked being at GAMU. So he's kind of like, just listening to his dad talk. And then the dad, he's pretty much more interested in what the teams can do for him and his wife than what they can do for Bojan, because he's thinking that if he can get Bojan into a Division I school, then he was talking about health benefits for him and his wife, and then when Bojan goes to the NFL, like what all he can do. So Bojan, he pretty much doesn't say anything. He just says, "Okay, well, we'll see how it goes, and thanks for looking out." But he really wants to stay at GAMU. Not sure if it's because he likes GAMU or he just likes the fact that he doesn't have to deal with his dad on a day-to-day basis. So then we go to Diamond, and he's back at the hotel room with that girl again. And so I call her his cuddy buddy, but they are discussing the sister, and he's like getting more in depth about the relationship with the sister and how they don't get along. And so when the girl went over, she took her clothes off, but she still had on like her negligee and all this stuff. And she goes and she climbs on top of him, and he's fully dressed. And so we get a scene of his hand, and he definitely has a gold wedding band on his ring finger. So now I'm kind of wondering if this lady is his wife, and maybe this is some role play stuff that they have going on. It's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out, and will we ever really get a reveal of who this lady is and what she is to him. So we go back to Cedric and Ebony, and now they are in his dorm room, and she tells Cedric that she could really use a night away from her parents, and could she stay? And so at this point I was definitely confused, because I am like 99.9% sure that Ebony lives in Miami, and that after the whole hazing incident and Eva was trying to talk to her parents and to get Ebony to stay, that they said they were taking Ebony back home. So is there like a Miami, Georgia? Maybe, because I'm thinking Florida, Miami, Florida, because I live in Florida. But maybe there's a Miami that's near Atlanta, and that's where she lives at. Because when Cedric went to see Ebony earlier in the show, she was definitely in her like personal bedroom. And when he knocked on the door, she thought it was her mother coming in the room. So I don't know how we've gotten from Miami to the GAMU campus and in Cedric's room, but we're going to go with the flow. So Bryce comes in, and he's really surprised that Ebony is there. And so Cedric tells him that Ebony will be staying with them for a few days, and things get a little awkward, so Ebony says that she's going to step out, so the two of them can talk. So inside the room, Cedric tells Bryce, about his dad and how, he treated him when he came to visit him at the jail. And so Bryce is in denial and saying that, Cedric misunderstood, or, he's lying on his dad. But then Cedric starts, repeating some of the things that the dad said about them being fourth generation and how they have their reputation to uphold. And so I think Bryce, is kind of clicking in his head that what Cedric is saying probably is the truth. And I blinked for a second, so I totally missed how they went from talking about Ebony staying for a couple of days to what happened at the jail, but I'm sure it was something that was said that triggered this conversation. So then we go outside of the room, and Ebony is at the snack machine when Noni comes up, and Noni is wearing her band uniform. And so Ebony is really surprised that Noni had taken her spot, and I'm really surprised that nobody had told her that Noni got that spot, particularly since her and Cedric seems to have been keeping in communication with each other. You would think that he would have told her that. But when she confronts Noni about taking the spot, especially after, she had shared with her that it was Danny and the rest of the drum majors that beat her up and, did the whole hazing thing. But then Noni is just so arrogant. So I officially don't like Noni at this point. And she says, well, technically, I didn't take your position because once you quit the team, it was no longer your position. So I think Ebony should have slapped the hell out of Noni at that point. So, Ebony lets her know instead that, she's trifling and that, she has her head so far up Diamond's ass that she doesn't realize that, how she's hurting people and that she's lacking integrity. So then we go back to Diamond and he's in his office when his sister comes storming in and she throws like a stack of checks at him and she's yelling at him, telling him that, she wishes that he would stop sending them to her and that she can't believe that after all this time he hasn't realized that she never cashes the checks. And so, she's going off and we learn that I guess they were abused by their father or their mother or somebody, and that she feels that Diamond abandoned her, when he got old enough to leave the house, that he left and I guess went to college and never came back. So she basically yells at him to leave her alone and stop trying to contact her so he doesn't get the opportunity to tell her that the reason he keeps calling is because he wants to let her know that he's dying. We go back to Eva and she decides to do a video webcast on the campus website, and she's talking about the rape video, and she basically declares that what happened on the video was rape and that it would be investigated, to the fullest extent, and whoever was responsible, will be held accountable for what they did. And then the scene goes from Madison and Sydney watching the video in their room to Cedric and Bryce, and I think it was another guy in their room, and they're watching it. And so, of course, like everybody on campus is checking it out. And so after the video, Sydney decides that she needs to tell her mom, and then that she's the one that's in the video. And then Madison is like, no, you need to tell her right now, so let's go. So as they're walking through the quad, there's a lot of student activity out there, and you have the people that are, about the whole awareness, the rape awareness, are passing out literature, and then you have members of the football team, coming out. And I think it probably was the same day as the game, so people are just like really out celebrating and relaxing and having a good time with each other. Sydney and Madison are walking and she sees Terrance and he's like hugging on all these different girls, and everybody's playing up to him because he's a star quarterback and the team is winning. So she points out that he is the one that raped her, and she runs over, breaks away from Madison and runs into the crowd and is like yelling at him, that you're a rapist, you're the one that raped me. And so, everybody's looking, and once again the phones come out with the videos, and Terrance is denying it, saying that she doesn't know what she's talking about. And so this was another confusing scene for me, because remember in my last video I pointed out that it looked like Terrance in the video that was on top of the girl, but that I didn't think it was him because he was at the party and Sydney was at the party. So it seemed like she would have been uncomfortable, and it wasn't like, they were like really spread out. They were in a living room, and it was like an average size living room. So everybody was gathered in this room, and there's no way that Sydney could not have seen Terrance. And I actually think that there was a scene where Sydney and Madison were actually standing in front of Terrance and the other two football players. So I don't know, like, did she know it was Terrance at the party, but because nobody knew about it, it was okay? And did she only get upset and want to call him out because the video was out and everybody had seen it? So I think I like the fact that they kind of took that angle, because then it shows how, people go back and forth and say, sort of like with the whole Bill Cosby thing where he's accused of raping all these women, and then everybody say, well, why didn't they say anything? Why did they continue to, go hang out with him and go back to his hotel rooms, and now, later they want to say that he raped them. So maybe that's the angle that they're trying to take, that Sydney was keeping it to herself, even though she knew that was Sydney, that was Terrance in the room with her. But now that it's kind of out in the open and she feels like she has a voice because people are talking about campus rapes, that now she can call him out. would be interested to know what you guys think about that little scenario. So then, after that little scene, we go back to Eva's office, and Ella Gray storms in, and she's upset with Eva for doing the video. And she's like, you know, I had that talk with you last night. Did you not hear a word that I said? And so Eva says that it was the conversation that they had the night before that made her want to do the video. And then, you know, Ella Grace is telling her, but you keep missing the point. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not about empowering women. It's about being the best president that you can, and, you know, being fair to everybody and making sound decisions and not just running amok and doing what you're supposed to do. But I don't think Eva still gets it. So her and Ella Grace, who was like her staunch supporter, that whole relationship is fractured now because she's kind of fed up with Eva. So after Ella Grace storms out of Eva's office, AJ comes in and he has these printouts that Eva had asked him for, and he's basically cut the video and then blown up scenes so that they could see the faces of the people, you know, that were involved. And so Eva looks at the pictures and she realizes that the girl in the video is Sydney, and then she has a total breakdown and like starts crying and falls to the ground. But I think AJ may have had left. I think he gave her the pictures and then he left. He didn't stay there while she was looking at the pictures. So we cut away from Eva and we have a scene with Terrance, and he's rushing to the head football coach's office, and he's like banging on the door, but the coach isn't there. And then he kind of like slides down to the floor because he's panicking, like he doesn't know what to do because, you know, Sydney has made this allegation in front of all these people. So the show ends with Sydney walking into Eva's office, and it's her and Madison. And so Eva has her back to them and she's put on her jacket, and I think she was trying to pick up her purse and stuff. And so Sydney calls out her name, and when Eva turns around, you know, the two of them just start crying and they run and hug each other and they're like embracing. And so I thought it interesting that no matter how much, you know, our moms get on our nerves and how much, you know, we pretend to hate them and think that they're the worst people in the world, in times of trouble, there is nothing like running to your mom and being able to embrace her and have her tell you that everything is going to be all right. So this was another great episode, like I said, but I did, you know, I'm starting to see little glitches here and there. But go ahead and leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. And please share the video and tell other people about my channel if you like the videos that I'm putting out. So I hope that everyone has an awesome weekend, and take care, everybody. Until the next time, bye-bye.